The traditional forces that could keep this kind of thing in check, particularly in politics and in media, are unfortunately weak. And they're getting weaker by the moment. They're out of power. They're broke. They're technologically weak. They don't understand the space. They don't understand the online content creation sphere. And I feel like they've, most importantly, with their coverage of Gaza, discredited themselves to an entire generation. It seems right now that those people who genuinely desire for a better future, who want an alternative to the genocide, will have to start looking amongst themselves, looking within themselves, their friends, and away from the mainstream if they want to help bring something like justice into the world. So I stand before you as a man who simply wants some semblance of justice for the Palestinians. I urge you not to lean into nihilism and succumb to helplessness, because you do not need the academic pedigree to know right from wrong. All you need is your moral compass. As someone who has seen the Palestine question evolve over my past 10 years of public advocacy, I never would have imagined international organs demand legal restitution from America's most valuable asset. After all, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. Thank you. It's a little bit more somber of a tone than I take normally.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that speech. Just to run through how the rest of the evening will work, I'm going to do a moderated interview Q&A, and then after a while we're going to throw it open to questions in the audience, or I'll bring you a mic. Just to reiterate, this event is being live streamed on Twitch, so bear that in mind when you ask a question, if that's something you might not be comfortable with. Where I wanted to start, just picking up from where you ended that speech, of where we should look to, where people should look to if they want to affect change, of looking outside the mainstream. We've seen a lot of student movements here in Cambridge, over in America, of students taking direct action to try and change policy of the government towards Palestine. How optimistic are you about the potential for change from these kind of movements?
I'm more optimistic than I've ever been, because as I kind of alluded to in the end of that speech, anyone that has been aware of the situation in Palestine for longer than, 5 years will be the first to tell you that the attitude from the Western world is dramatically different. This doesn't mean that the governments have changed their attitude or shifted their policies, although some have, and it's unique, especially, and I stress the importance of the Western world specifically, because I think the Global South has known what a settler colonial apparatus looks like with their own personal experience with such things. But the allegiances that America needs to maintain in Europe, and even its own population, and the outlook that people have organically has shifted dramatically in the position of maybe not full-blown emancipation for Palestinians, but at least like some recognition for the atrocities. And I think that is truly unique, and it's a sign of hope despite all of the horrifying things that we see on a daily basis.
So what does a path look like for you towards genuine change in the Israel-Palestine situation?
I think we have also completely nullified mechanisms of pressure. In the past, we at least had labor unions that even engaged in militancy at times, and we've completely neutered them in the Western world, especially in America. Our labor union participation rate is around 10%. It's actually lower than Chile, which is a country that we specifically wrote the Constitution of to institute a neoliberal project there, and they still have a higher labor union participation rate than we do. And I think that is one of the major issues. So I hope that people can focus on unionization and engaging in community activism a little bit more in this process. And I think that under the Trump administration, people will be forced to do that regardless. Participate more in politics by not directly participating in the democratic process, but organizations outside of just simply voting for the Democratic Party, for example. Political actions like that are necessary. Yeah. And that's the only way that I think this pressure valve will release.
Do you think that Western governments' reluctance to endorse rulings such as the ICC against Benjamin Netanyahu, do you see that as something fundamentally damaging, or are you already less optimistic about how much change those kinds of international institutions can have.